What's up, Taiwan? I'm Ethan Liu with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. We begin with updates on Typhoon Kong-Rey, which has been sweeping across Taiwan since early afternoon on Thursday. At least one person has died and over 70 are injured in the largest storm to strike Taiwan since 1996. Dramatic footage from across the country shows the strength of the rare late-season storm as it lashes Taiwan with strong winds and rain. Work and classes have been suspended across the country. Over 500 international and domestic flights have been canceled. Taiwan's emergency command is warning the severe weather conditions are expected to continue throughout Thursday evening, with a high risk of landslides and flooding. Heavy rain warnings are in place for much of the country. The storm is expected to move northwest across the country over the course of the evening, eventually weakening and heading north over the Taiwan Strait on Friday. Our reporter Rick Lauer has been following the storm's progress throughout the day from Taitung on Taiwan's east coast, where the typhoon made landfall, and brings us this report.
Well, it's been a few hours since the typhoon made landfall here on Taiwan's east coast, but Typhoon Kong-Rey is still packing quite a punch. Wind speeds of about 100 kilometers an hour here in downtown Taitung, and steady rain. The typhoon's eye wall, that's the center of the typhoon, with those really powerful winds, ripped through this city throughout the day. And it left in its trail devastation. We've seen many trees down across the city, lamp posts, telephone wires, bits of buildings torn off, strewn across the street. We've spent the day reporting from this small agricultural city that's been facing up to this rare storm. Typhoon Kong-Rey lashes Taitung. Sitting between the mountains and the ocean, this is one of Taiwan's most important agricultural hubs. Its fields and orchards now wrecked by the biggest typhoon to hit in decades. The city streets largely empty. Schools and offices closed for the day.
会跌倒，会惨爆。这个不会习惯，这不能习惯，大家会很怕的，不可能习惯的。但是大家会先做好准备。
Taiwan's east coast is regularly battered by tropical storms throughout its summer, but Kong-Rey is the largest in size to make landfall here in 26 years. Gusts have been reaching 200 kilometers an hour here in the center of Taitung as Typhoon Kong-Rey rips through the city. Those extreme winds have been downing trees, traffic lights and electrical wires. The county government has put emergency services on their highest alert and issued evacuation notices for mountainous areas at risk of landslides. A warning local officials hope is heeded.
那风非常的强哦，特别是在登陆之后的那一阵子，所以我们在北部登陆东河或成功以北的哦，成功、长滨、纵谷地区，特别是山区哈，以及迎风面，那请各位乡镇长特别留意哦，特别留意。
Both officials and residents here hope they have done enough to prepare for this storm. The farmers still sheltering in place, waiting for morning to assess the extent of the damage wrought on their land by Kong-Rey. Typhoon Kong-Rey is massive, and its outer rims are expected to carry on bringing big winds like this for the next few hours. It's going to be another uneasy night for the residents of this small city that's found itself in direct fire of this deadly typhoon.
That was reporter Rick Lauer in Taitung. Authorities are trying to avert an oil spill after an abandoned Chinese cargo ship ran aground on Taiwan's north coast. The vessel is carrying 247 metric tons of oil and 37 tons of diesel. It was abandoned on Wednesday after becoming inoperable due to strong winds and waves brought by Super Typhoon Kong-Rey. It later ran aground near the popular coastal park in New Taipei. Officials plan to start extracting oil from the ship on Friday at the earliest. With less than a week until the U.S. presidential election, a tight race has Kamala Harris and Donald Trump fighting for swing states. Both candidates held rallies in the crucial battleground state of Wisconsin on Wednesday. Harris called her opponent unstable and obsessed with revenge, while Trump hit back at President Joe Biden's comment, seeming to call Trump supporters garbage. A CNN poll shows Harris with a slight edge over Trump in Wisconsin and Michigan, but in Pennsylvania, the two are neck and neck. The candidates will make their final campaign pushes over the next few days. In just a few days, Democratic candidate Kamala Harris could be making history as the first female president of the United States. At a time of deep division, some local politicians and citizens hope it will be her who rises to top to unite the country. Joyce Sun reports from New York.
New York State Senator Ewan Chu is feeling hopeful about the upcoming U.S. elections. An immigrant from Taiwan, the former journalist is the first Asian American woman elected to the over 200-year-old state Senate, and she believes the U.S.'s reputation as the leader of the free world needs a Kamala Harris win.
Absolutely. About time for us to elect a woman president. She's not going to just become a leader of the United States. She's a leader of the world, and that's a value we need to share with the whole world. How we protect our democracy, how we amplify the freedom.
Chu represents predominantly immigrant neighborhoods in Brooklyn, and the beauty of the community, she says, comes from its diversity.
It's the center of the universe.
Center of the universe.
That's how I introduce. This is center of the universe. I represent Brooklyn.
But diversity and immigration are points of contention in these elections. And with most Americans perceiving the country's politics as divisive and polarized, many are looking to the next president of the United States to close that gap. Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris has vowed to be that leader, vowing compassion and understanding against Republican candidate Donald Trump's rhetoric of fear and hate.
We are not going back. We are not going back.
The California-born daughter of Indian and Jamaican immigrants, the 60-year-old Harris has broken barrier after barrier. She went from serving as California Attorney General to Vice President of the country. Now she stands a chance at becoming the first woman and first South Asian American president of the United States. It's a historic feat that Harris has not focused on in her push for the White House.
Instead, Harris has spent her campaign speaking to voters' urgent concerns like the cost of living. She's pitched policies like building more affordable housing and cutting the cost of groceries, all to create an opportunity economy where people, regardless of their circumstance or backgrounds, can benefit from social mobility.
But unlike in New York, a Democratic stronghold, Harris remains locked in a dead heat against Trump in decisive battleground states. Her supporters remaining optimistic that she will nonetheless prevail come Election Day.
We need her. She's the one for this moment.
Sure, it might be uncomfortable. She is a woman. She is African-American, Asian descent, but I feel like Asian culture and African-American culture are like very mainstream parts of American culture now. So I do think people are ready for her in a way maybe they wouldn't have been ready 20 years ago.
While voters in this blue state are more willing to embrace Harris, academics say it'll be tougher to sway conservative voters across the country and overcome deep-rooted sexism.
The United States just has a really difficult job of seeing women in these roles because they have been so heavily masculinized. So the way that we talk about the framers of the Constitution, we call them our founding fathers. The way that we talk about our president is the father of the nation, right? Like these are very gendered terms that many people have a hard time thinking about women in these positions. Perhaps this is the right time for it.
The U.S. government has been becoming more diverse. The number of women in Congress is at an all-time high, with 153 women, about 28% of all members. It's also the most racially and ethnically diverse pool of lawmakers in the country's history. For local politicians like State Senator Chu, the key is to pass the torch onwards.
I'm the only woman senator, Asian woman senator in the whole state, 248 years now. It is my mission to make sure our next generation, they have the opportunity, they have the platform, they have the training, be able to be ready for when the opportunity is there, when we need a new leaders.
It's the same message as Kamala Harris's. She is already the first woman to hold the vice presidency and now potentially the top office, and says she will not be the last, pledging to ensure that the United States keeps its spirit as a place of possibilities. Luffy Lee and Joyce Sen in Brooklyn, New York for TaiwanPlus.
We'll be checking in with our teams on the ground in the U.S. all the way through Election Day on November 5th. Tune in daily for those reports. Taiwan's economy grew more than expected in this year's third quarter. GDP rose nearly 4% from July to September, mainly due to greater global demand for Taiwan's tech exports geared toward AI and advanced computing. Taiwan is critical to the global tech supply chain, with leading semiconductor companies like TSMC supplying major players like NVIDIA and Apple. Millions of tons of plastic waste end up in the ocean each year, but some new startups are using both old-school labor and new technology to improve recycling. Chris Gorin has the story.
These boats on the island of Ko Chang in eastern Thailand are returning home with their daily catch. Not fish, but plastic garbage. They're working with a startup called Tide to recycle some of the estimated 6 million tons of plastic waste that goes into the ocean each year. It's a problem that can seem endless.
Hopefully in the future we can do more, because even 200 tons per year that we can collect, and for now I think it's a really small part of this problem.
The company is taking a new approach when it comes to proof that it's removing plastics from the ocean. It uses blockchain technology to track the trash from collection to the end user. After paying the collectors for their work, a labor-intensive sorting process begins, due to the wide range of discarded plastics. While arduous, the company says this kind of work means it's not necessary to make new plastic.
We are convinced there is more than enough plastic on our world, and we should take what already exists.
The final product of all this work is raw plastic pellets, known as nurdles. They're sold to buyers like Condor Group, one of Europe's largest carpet makers. The carpets made with recycled plastic cost as much as 40% more than those made from fresh plastics. But Condor says customers are willing to pay for quality, sustainable products.
So we see sustainability not just as a trend, but more as stewardship for future generations to come.
You have to start somewhere, and the more products that are being launched and prove that the quality is just the same, convince others to switch to.
Combining old-fashioned labor with cutting-edge tech, startups like Tide are trying to make an impact on a seemingly intractable problem. And if such efforts are successful, it could represent a new wave in a sea of plastic. Klein Wong and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
For the first time in recorded history, Japan's Mount Fuji remains snowless heading into November. The mountain's iconic snow cap typically forms in early October and melts in July. Local weather officials say warm weather and high rainfall account for Fuji's lack of snow. Japan experienced its hottest summer on record this year, with 2024 on track to become the hottest year on record globally. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website and follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. And finally, we leave you with images of Hualien County as Typhoon Kong-Rey savages Taiwan's east coast. I'm Ethan Liu. Take care, and I'll see you next time.